That's good. That's a good thing. Consent is an important thing. So we'll talk about
exactly.
lots of ethical dimensions and considerations today. We've got Brian Sandberg from Growtrust with us again. We're so excited to have you. And I've got a list of questions here, but we're going to riff just like last time. And if you've got other insights or you want to take it a different direction, very open to that. So the first discussion question that I've got, because what we've been talking about in the class the last week and then this week is it's kind of interesting the way that the textbook authors laid it out, and I think maybe even the way it's couched within the CFP, exam, but there's like this economic environment that everyone's a part of, and they want you to know about that so you can help the clients who are navigating that environment. But then there's also that's a part of that environment, that external environment. There's this legal and regulatory landscape that clients navigating, but you're also navigating. And so, and just that fiduciary relationship and what that looks like. So I think that's what we're going to try to dive into today. And you've got the experience of what that's like. So at Growtrust, I see on your website that you make a very clear commitment to specifically the CFP Code of Ethics, and you signal that to the market. So how does your firm uphold those ethics, that Code of Ethics? Maybe you could talk about what the code really means to you and how you practice it, but then how do you uphold that in your firm? Is that how you recruit and train people? Is that how you just the culture of the organization? What are the things that you kind of use in the culture to make that happen? I'm just really curious.
Yeah, so this has always been this fascinating conversation to me because what's going on in our world right now is a couple years ago, there was this conversation about a fiduciary requirement, okay? And so really the application of that was, are you a commission-based salesperson where if on April 14th, I recommend that you add money to this mutual fund, have talked to Chris, I've decided that this is an appropriate investment for him, and on April 14th, it's appropriate, okay? And so that was kind of this commission type standard where you don't have, and then if you lose your job 10 days later, legally I'm off the hook for that, okay? Even though you should be maybe less risk adverse, and maybe even go to cash or anything like that because your situation changed. And on the other side, you had kind of this fiduciary standard, which is typically more of fee-based business, people that have an advisory relationship with somebody. And what that says is that 365 days a year, my recommendation to you has to be valid. I have to document on an ongoing basis that we've at least had an annual conversation about your goals, objectives, your accounts, your financial situation, and that I am actively engaged in advising you in that, okay? We have a pretty stark difference from a legal standpoint. And then, so the marketplace, and this was kind of tail end of the Obama administration, was trying to get this fiduciary standard in. And boy, it's one of these things that just sounds great, doesn't it? I mean, yeah, you should have a fiduciary standard 365 days a year for somebody. So the problem with something like that is the application of it, okay? So let's say I have somebody that comes to me that is a college student, and they say, boy, you've come to our class, could you just help me out? I'd just love to add $100 a month to something and put it in a mutual fund. Can you give me advice on that? Well, in a commission world, I'll go, sure, you know what? I'll just give you an advice. The chances of us staying contacted for the next 40 years, I'm okay doing that. We can do that. In a fiduciary world, I'm going to get paid $1, literally $1, and I'm going to have all this legal requirement for somebody that maybe has $1,000 with me, okay? And so all of a sudden, a practitioner like myself and my partner says, unless you have a minimum level of things and I earn a minimum amount of money from a client, I'm not going to talk to anybody else, nor is anybody else's, because the legal risk is way too much from serve those things. And so it's just kind of, being in college, people hear the law of unintended consequences, right? And that is one of these things that that's what that law was kind of doing. So the other thing that always fascinates me about this is it's kind of this conversation about like ethics. So how are you ethical? Well, you're either not, or you either come out of the womb ethical or you're not, right? I mean, to me, I wrote down on your questions, on two of them, I wrote DNA. It's in my DNA. I mean, that's really what it is. I mean, our firm and my partners and I, we have good Christian ethics. We're good people. We want to take care of folks. We just happen to be in the business of financial planning and financial services. And so it's from the top down. My partners and I communicate that to our staff, and it comes out. And there's no doubt with hiring and training and all those types of things, it does go through, it kind of works its way through your company. But you can glean a lot from Facebook when you're hiring people and other social media things about what these. We've done it with a whole bunch of people who we've hired. So if you're watching this, be careful what you post, right? I mean, it doesn't go away. So anyway, a little bit of a rabbit trail there, but kind of giving you our thought.
No. I think that's great. I'd love to tease some of that out a little bit. So I've never heard, that was really fascinating. I've never heard anybody kind of like, dichotomize the fiduciary relationship and then the commissions, and then try to explain why a commissions-based relationship might actually be a good thing. I think the standard narrative that I hear is, if they're commission-based, they're greedy and they're just trying to soak money off of you,
right?
And that's their goal. It's transactional. It's not really. It's not a. Their interest is not your best interest. It's their best interest. It's how much commission they can earn, and it's a transaction. It's like naturally adversarial. Your relationship. You're trying to make sure you're not getting duped. Caveat emptor, buyer beware. Make sure you're aware of what you're getting into, and so then like contract law plays in there, but it's not. They don't need to represent your best interest. If they convince you to buy something, that's on you that's your decision you made. Versus the fiduciary role, where you're legally required to represent the best interests of the client. You can't just put them in the funds that are going to get you the highest commissions. And if you do that, there's legal ramifications for it. And so I've never heard that. That's really fascinating.
Think about
one of the reasons we got growing minimums and things like that. That's a really interesting point. I think that makes sense too.
Well, a good example is, realtors. A realtor helps you with the transaction. They help you through a complicated situation, and you pay them a commission to do that, and then off you go. Or a mortgage professional. And so there are people that may not have a complex situation that you say, you know what, let me explain you the nuances of how to open up a Roth IRA or any type of this, and it's best for you to just kind of pay us and go on your way. And if we need to do more work down in the future, it gets more complex. So that's what I challenge a lot of people. And I don't want to get on my soapbox on some of these things, but I challenge people, when laws are made and edicts come down from the tower, to think about the real world application of these. There are reasons, and should somebody make a law for me to decide how I can interact with my advisor, right? I mean, that's not really. I should be able to do my own due diligence and decide which is the better way to do that, because there are certain products and things that are actually better off served on that commission type thing. And just if you needed to buy a CD, So anyway, I think that is an interesting part of it. And they have this other thing called a best interest contract, a BIC, BIC. That come through as well, and that would be where it's kind of like a fiduciary standard, but it's applying it on non-fee-based type products where it would be like applying it to a commission.
So a lot of this is how you're compensated, and then your responsibilities or duties towards your client, right? And it seems like those things typically they're going to align certain ways, like the commission, and you can't lie about the product, but that's what you're doing.
Right.
Hi, Maddie. I think I see you. You're top of your head, at least.
Hi. Sorry,
It's
I couldn't figure out how to join until now.
Oh, it's okay. Welcome. We recorded the first part. You can go back and watch it later, but we're glad to have you now the rest of the time. Actually, you got here at a perfect time for anybody who's looking to get hired anywhere, really. But so that second point that you made, Brian, that I would love to tease out a little bit. So, you saying, okay, you either have it or you don't when it comes to ethics, right? You either are ethical or you're not, and maybe it comes from the womb. We can argue about that, but I think your point stands when it comes to your morality and your ethics are fairly set by the time you're 22. You're about to get a job somewhere. You've been raised in such a way, and you've been formed as a human developed, and you've developed this framework of how you make your decisions about what's right, what's wrong, what shouldn't I do. And it's hard to probably untrain that or retrain that or change that after 22. So you're saying it's more about making sure you hire the right people, and I would say even as an employee, you're making sure you're interviewing the interviewer and making sure you're interviewing the right people, right? Who clearly have those core values that you just said you espouse, these Christian values. Well, what are those? So what would you say then what are the questions you ask in an interview, or what are those core values that you're highlighting when you're talking to clients or when you're talking to anybody?
Well, and that's, some of these are just these simple things of just like, honesty, trustworthiness, all these different types of things. And it's like, well, how do you really tease that out, to use your word, in the interview process? And it's, I don't know. I mean, it is, if you do enough of them, which we have when we've hired folks, you can tell the differences. And a lot of what we have done is we have used some staffing services to kind of call out some folks. But you're just trying to create scenarios and say, hey, if you were approached with this situation, how would you handle it? And so it's really an interesting thing, because it's not a magical process. It's more of like a gut feel type thing. So, yeah.
Don't let the HR people hear you say that.
Yeah. That's profile testing and all these kinds of things. But at the end of the day, I mean, we've had people that have worked out and haven't worked out. And so
I'm with you. I'm with you in that if they can't describe, if you ask someone pointed questions or ask them open-ended questions, and they can talk themselves into trouble, right? It's like, just describe a time where you had to be honest and it was hard, and tell me about that. And people will give you the story, and you can tell even through their discussion of that story, are they being honest with you right now? It's like, oh, when the waiter came by my table and asked me how the food was, I said it was pretty good, but it really wasn't that good. And so it's like, okay, that's a pretty weak example of your integrity being tested. So I'm guessing you're not being honest with me, and you're just trying to sound good on the interview or whatever. So so that's really interesting. Anything else on that topic? And I want to launch into another one that follows.
Go to the next one.
So I'm guessing there are dilemmas though that you face. I mean, or else why is this such a big topic? I mean, I can tell you personally, I've had personal experience in the financial industry, seeing corruption firsthand. And so how are ethical dilemmas handled in practice? What does that look like? I mean, can you give an example? And was discipline involved at the firm level, or did it become legal and you had courts involved, or what went on? Could you just tell us what that looks like?
Yeah, I mean, we've never had any legal issues or anything of that nature. Most of it would just be, and we probably haven't had much of this. I would say it's probably more of an industry thing. So,
Right.
In industry, you have people, and doesn't matter what industry this is when you have people that are compensated by commissions and products, you probably have a short-term mindset sometimes. Meaning I'm going to try to earn what I can earn today and try to maximize each person and each client versus the building of a business. Okay. And that's, I think, the biggest difference that I have seen over time, because I've worked with a lot of folks side by side, and the people that have maximized, the joke is YTB, they call it yield to broker. How much did your broker make? Okay. So what was the yield to the broker? And the people that have had to try to maximize their revenue off of every single client, whether it's more commissions or high commission products, and constantly be doing something like that, as opposed to solving a problem and maintaining that client long term, those people have their businesses are not very fundamentally sound. They're multiples. Okay, if you go out and sell their business, their multiple of revenue is 1, where a multiple of revenue on mine is 2.5 times. So you think about that and go, well, if you had a business that was doing $500,000, mine is worth 1.25, theirs is worth $500,000 if they go sell it. Now, and we both might make the same every single year. And so it's this conversation of if you're building a career or if you're building a business, you're daily going to be faced with, do I make money today, or do I, try to have an elongated career? And ethics is a huge play into this, right? I mean, because at some point, your client's going to figure it out that you were doing what's in your best interest as opposed to their best interest, and they're going to go find somebody else. And I can think of one family right off the top of my head that's the exact situation. They walked in, they had about $1.3 million, and they walked in with every high commission product that you could ever buy, and they owned them all. And I sat across the table and I said, I cannot tell you, I could not put more. Your prior gentleman that you worked with has sold you every single product, and it took them about a year to figure it out. And they're like, you're right, that's all it was. And so it was an interesting conversation. And now they're kind of this client for life kind of thing, where we have a better relationship because we weren't trying to maximize everything. In fact, I don't think the first 6 months that we met with them, we made a nickel.
Huh. Oh, wow. That's interesting. Hey, Maddie, I don't want to exclude you from the conversation. If you, as you're hearing things, and if you've got questions, I really want you to jump in. And in these conversations online, it's a lot harder to jump in. So yeah, make sure you're doing it. Okay. Just make sure raise your hand or just start talking, and we'll catch on at some point and make sure you're heard. Okay.
Yeah, I did have a question. Have you seen any firms do better with their ethics if they have an upfront fee or a subscription as opposed to earning a commission? How many firms do you see that do that, and is there a difference?
So one of the things that Chris and I were talking about before you hopped on was the difference between kind of fees and commissions. And it's a really thing. Hop on and watch the first 5-10 minutes, because I don't want to rehash it for everybody else. But it's really an interesting thing, because I was talking to a gentleman yesterday, and there are fantastic people in my business that do it all different ways. And so it really just comes down to, and I know it's almost impossible to figure it out. It just comes down to finding somebody that has your best interest at heart, and you just have a good feeling that they're going to actually do what they say they're going to do. And that's,
Yeah.
it's kind of like this amoeba type. How do you know? Well, I mean, how do you know? I mean, I think that's the challenge in my world, is to build this trust with somebody, you know, in a half hour or an hour, and be an educated, informative practitioner that says, these are the things that we can help you with. These are the things that we're going to solve with you. And then at the end of the day, how they pay us, it's really up to them. That's kind of what we were talking about, is there are multiple ways that can be paid, and different products, different solutions, different investments have different compensation structures for them. And at the end of the day, they're all good. And my kind of semi-joke that I've used with folks is, all financial products can be used for good or bad. It's just how much you own of them. And that's, if you hear about people that have gotten in trouble with things, it's because they took all their money and did one thing, or all their money and, you know, gave it to the guy at church that said he could make 15%, and, you know, and all of a sudden it's gone. And so it's a little buyer beware type stuff, but it's also so that I don't know that I fully answered the question, but I'm trying to. You just got to kind of have a conversation with each person.
Yeah, I think that was really helpful for me, just to think through, because I've always kind of had this negative view of commissions, and I've never really thought about how that can be a really good way to structure a deal with somebody who doesn't have enough assets under management that really could justify another kind of arrangement. So I think that's really helpful. So yeah, Maddie, definitely go back and check out the first 5 or 10 minutes. I want to shift gears a little bit, because I just think your experience and what you've experienced would be really helpful to hear this, because I had somebody who's a registered investment advisor just telling me stories about the pain that compliance is, right? And you're talking about the cost of it. If you don't have I don't know what your minimum is, but $500,000 or $1 million for me to manage, it's just hard to want to invest that time and energy, even just from a regulatory and compliance standpoint. So what do you think, what does that look like? How much time, and energy, what is the cost of compliance, do you think, in the current environment?
So I'm kind of a big believer in this pendulum, which is, take just about anything, and the pendulum will swing way one way, and then it'll swing way back the other way, and then it'll kind of settle in the middle for a little while, and then it'll repeat itself. And so about 4 to 6 years ago, I mean, the world of compliance was ridiculous. I mean, what you would have to do just to do anything, and not like, I don't like to document things, just way too much documentation, way too much paper, not being able to do e-signatures and all these different kinds of things, accepting fax documents, those types. And then it's kind of in the middle right now, which is, it's actually pretty seamless for us. So I can actually open an account with somebody through email. They sign on their phone, comes back to me. We do all of the compliance, if you will, of how much you make, what's a suitable transaction, what's your risk tolerance, all these different kinds of things. A lot of it can be done pretty remote these days. My bent on the compliance has always been, we're doing everything above board. It takes me a little bit longer. It's just weeding out a bunch of people who can't wade through it. So but a smaller firm, if you have somebody that's a 1 or a 2 person shop to deal with compliance, or an RIA, they deal with all their compliance and do all of their regulatory filings. It is a burden. I've got 4 staff that basically handles a lot of this compliant type stuff. When you mail a letter out, you got to keep a copy of that. You've got to record it, and You know, if you correspond with other people, you've got to always keep these files of corresponding files, and emails have to be reviewed. And so it's, if you have more infrastructure and staff, it's less of a burden, but there's certainly more costs associated with it. Are you muting?
Just a heads up. I heard some echo, so I muted myself. I muted you too, Maddie. So if you need to unmute, just make sure you do that. You can do that on your side. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah. Any questions, Maddie? Okay, keep shaking your head. One last question that I want, and then we can, just whatever lingering thoughts or comments we want to make. You mentioned your Christian ethics, that you were born with, born again. You were born again with those Christian ethics, maybe. The indwelling Holy Spirit has convicted you of things. So, but how do you see that, Christian worldview fitting into your role as a financial planner, financial advisor? I mean,
Yeah. So
is it very natural, or is it something where sometimes you go, oh shoot, I need to make sure that I'm doing it this way, or I got to rethink that conversation I just had. I feel like that wasn't my best self. That that Jesus will say, well done. So what do you think?
Yeah, so this is a very interesting conversation because in my world, the reason I'm not involved in this was to help people. Okay, and the way that is help people navigate all different types of finance. So, gentleman I was just on the phone with before we did this, his father-in-law passed away. They've got tax issues with CDs, bank accounts, annuities, life insurance. They've got a stock that is a common stock that only is traded once a month by sealed bids. So, I mean, it's just a fascinating situation. They've got all these different types of things, and he doesn't understand the tax law or the trust law or any of these types of things. So it's awesome to help him out and him go, oh man, I had no idea about this. So here is the underlying issue that somebody in my world operates is, at the end of the day, I do have to make a profit, right? And so there is a certain level of, if I'm going to do all this work for someone, they have to have a certain level of ability to pay me for it, okay? And so if, and that, I don't want to say it conflicts with helping people out in the Christian world, but you do have to mentally decide at some point in time, okay, this person is going to take more of my time, but they really need some help. They're a widow, they're whatever. And I had a lady yesterday, she called Monday, and she's 69 years old. Her husband passed away last year, and she is freaking out because the market is down. She thinks, she doesn't trust banks. She doesn't trust anything. I mean, it's just completely nonsensical. And I'm like, we got to stay invested. If you're not going to listen to our advice, you feel free to transfer your accounts anywhere else, and we kind of hang up, and I kind of think it through, and I'm like, man, that's kind of heavy-handed. I mean, this is a lady that, needs help. And so I called her back later on the day and said, you know what? I know there's a ton going on in the world. Let's just chill out for a month or two. Let's get back together. Let's get your son and daughter in the room, and let's have a good conversation. And so you kind of have, sometimes you have compassion and compensation that kind of fight. And you want to make sure that there are periods of time where I do have to check myself in that, because I only want people that want our help, but I realize there are periods of time where they do want the help. There's just other competing factors that they're going through, and you need to be compassionate about those things. So
that's a great example. I think just reframing this whole, I really have it frustrates me a little bit, because during these crises, people will talk about the helping professions, right? Can you think of a single profession that people aren't helping somebody? I mean, I'm just trying
Right.
to think of a profession where you're not helping. I mean,
Right.
they're paying you. What are you doing? Are you hurting them? Like that, these
Right.
other hurting professions where we're hurting people and somehow sneaking money out of them? Like, I don't understand that. You know, if you're just a doctor, we've kind of raised up, you know, oh, if you're a doctor, you're in social work, you're in, you know, you know, whatever, you're a pastor, you're in this helping profession and you actually want to help people. And then the implied negative is everybody else over here
is not helping. He's greedy.
so all the wicked finance people who are just greedy and are trying to steal your money, just find the least greedy one who will steal the least amount of money from you, and that's the best you can do. And I think we need to flip that narrative, you know, over and I think that really does take good, honest, integrity-filled, compassionate financial professionals to do it, because I think the narrative is there and the stereotype is there for a reason. It didn't just spring and emerge out of the netherscape of people's imagination.
Absolutely.
Like there have been and still are a lot of, just like there have been dishonest doctors, by the way, and nurses and
Absolutely.
people, but it's just, I think we need to fight that narrative. So I'm hoping that there are, you know, just tremendous more people, you know, like you, Brian. I'm not trying to put you on a pedestal, but you know, people, they believe, they have conviction, and they do want to help people. And that's not just a sales tactic. It's not just a, I'm telling you I want to help you, but in reality, I'm thinking about the, you know, the zeros at the end of your account or whatever that are going to come my way. And so, anyway, I just appreciate
Well,
hearing.
I mean, I think the other thing is it's really not unlike any other profession. I mean, which is just do what you say you're going to do. Okay. I mean, and this is, you talk about kind of going back to our interviews, we test people. Okay. And the way that we test them is we'll say, hey, send us a follow-up email in a day or two, or we'll give them a task to do. Okay. And it's nothing magical, you know, like you don't have to jump rope 400 times. You just have to send me an email by Friday, you know, with something like that. And what it does is it gives you an idea of whether they're going to do what they say they're going to do, right? And that's what is amazing to me, is just communicating with people, okay? And if there's a lot of studies that are done in my world where the reason why people lose clients is because they haven't basically touched them enough, talked to them enough, communicated enough. And what I find is I'll tell somebody, let's say, hey, Maddie, it's Monday or it's Tuesday. I don't even know what day it is. It's Tuesday. And you know what? I'm going to get back to you on Thursday. You know what? If I get really, really busy on Thursday, I'm going to tap you a quick email and go, hey, you know what? I know I told you I'd get it by Thursday. I'll definitely have it to you tomorrow. And what do you say? You go, oh, no problem. It wasn't that big of a deal anyway. Thanks for communicating with me. But if I send it to you on Friday, you go, well, he was going to get it to me on Thursday. I must not be important to him, right? And so it's just a communication thing. And so me as a practitioner who gets busy, and I have had to do better and better with people, because we would usually be able to deliver something the next day or the day after. And now I'm saying, you know what? It's going to be a week. It's going to take us a week to get that to you. We've got other people that are in line already, and people 99 times out of 100, they're, oh, no problem. It wasn't that big of a deal anyway. We just have to get it done, right? And so, I really think that that's what I would tell anybody who is going out in the workforce, is just be accountable to your word, and you're going to, it's magical. It really is. It's really funny. The other thing that we talk about is, because we're in a customer service business, we are, even my staff that works for us, we are like so sensitive to customer service. Like when the waitress comes and says, okay, I'll be back in a minute. And they're gone for like 10 minutes. We're like, come on, you know, all you have to do is simple things. Just walk around my table and go, hey, you know what? I got a couple other big order. Just communicate with people. So anyway, you get me off on a trail in this, but.
Do what you say. I think that's a great ethical axiom that if we abide by that, you're right, we'll stand out. So that's a powerful one to land on. Maddie, do you have any? I don't want to let Brian go without you satisfying your own curiosity or just important questions you might have.
Well, we don't have to. If she wants to ask stuff on non-recorded, we can do that too. So.
Oh, okay. That's true.
I think my mic's on now. Yeah, but so you would, what I'm hearing, I guess, is that this area of finance is pretty like interdisciplinary. Like you need people to do good with customer service and communicating, but they have to be accurate and know all their stuff. And so it's very like I found it interesting when we had a CFP come in at the beginning of the semester talking about how one of his coworkers like came from psychology and like you have people who come from a business background or come from and some people who might come from communications. And so I think that that's the really interesting part. And that you just want people to represent your firm well, and that comes through communication.
Yeah, I mean, so I could think of, and Chris, if you want to, I don't know if you want to end this or if you want to keep it going while I kind of go through some stuff. But I mean, I'll give you some background on some of these things. But this is let's keep it for this one. So, like one of my partners is a pharmacist. Another one that we're just in the process of buying out was an engineer. I have a business marketing degree, kind of, and then the other one I think had a general business. But it is fascinating, and I think I can't remember whether when I came in and taught, I talked to, was it behavioral finance? That was the one I did.
Yeah, you came in our investments class and it covered behavioral.
So it is this psychological thing, Maddie, where psychologists probably do very, very well as long as they can kind of get out of their own way a little bit, because it is this massive psychological thing where if you, especially in the world of investing and planning, if you think, yeah, I should lay things out thoughtfully, that does make sense. But then all of a sudden you open your statement up and you're down a certain amount of thing, and all psychology, your brain tells you these crazy things. And last year, and I've used this example, Chris, a bunch of times, I gave everybody a risk profile and a basically investor profile sheet to fill out and scored it. And one of the questions on there was, if your accounts dropped by 15% and you open your statement, would you be okay? And everybody in the class is like, yeah, no problem at all. And I said, well, I'm going to test your result. And so I went up to the board and I wrote, if you had $10,000 and you open your statement, you're down $1,500 and you have $8,500, are you okay? And everybody's like, yeah, we're still okay. And I said, well, about $100,000, you're down 15, you have 85,000. No problem. I said, all right, I'm going to take it one step further. I said, if you have $1 million and you open your statement, you're down 150,000, you have 850, how do you feel? It got real quiet. And I think it was Dan. Dan raised his hand and goes, no, I'm not okay. I go, what? I said, you guys are college students. It's 15%. What do you, no, the number is bigger. And that's the difference, is it's not bigger. And that's the challenge that my world has, is when you have more money and you have more resources, your brain tells you that it's worse than it really is, even though the percentage is the exact same from 10 grand to 100 grand to $1 million. So
can that story, which I think is a great story. I've got this story from Andy Stanley, who's a pastor in Atlanta, and he's talking about how he went and visited he and his wife went to dinner at someone's, a friend's house, and the friends are billionaires. And these billionaires, the whole dinner, they're talking and they're so worried about the markets. They're so worried about, just all these different risks and different things that could go wrong. And they're just filled with fear and anxiety. And he and his wife leave. And right when he gets out, they get out of, further enough away, nobody would hear them, get into the car. He turns to his wife and says, "We're never going to worry about money again." And she's like, "Hi, what are you talking about?" He's like, "Because it doesn't matter how much you have, you're never going to feel secure.
Right.
Physical security is a myth, And so it's more the psychology and the mindset and the faith. I really think, as a Christian, where is your hope found? Is it in that $1 million portfolio, or is it somewhere else? And so I think that's a great. If we want to end the recording, we can keep talking off the
That's right.
record, but
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.